Hey, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Behind the Scene podcast. On today's episode, I'm speaking with Tyler Kinzer. He's an architectural and real estate photographer outside of Tucson, Arizona. Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Behind the Scene podcast. I'm your host, Frederick Van Johnson. Today on the hot seat, maybe it is hot because he's in Arizona, but today on the hot seat is Tyler Kinzer. We're going to be talking about his architectural photography business, how he built it, how he incorporates various software programs into his post-processing workflow, including Luminar, etc. We're going to be talking about all that and more on this episode. So, Tyler, welcome to the show, man. How are you doing?
Thanks, Frederick. Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Is it hot out there? Is it hot in Arizona?
Yeah, we had a couple days of cold snap, but now it's back up in the low 90s. So yeah,
it's not
definitely
too bad.
hot.
Yeah, it's not too bad. It's not too bad. Well, cool, man. Well, welcome to the show. I'm excited to talk about this stuff because as you and I were talking before I started recording. There's been a lot of changes in the software industry, and there's a lot of different ways to approach photography and post processing and all that. One of the ways that I think Skyloom is approaching things, they want to hear from folks that are in the trenches, that are using software to put food on the table and make mortgage payments and that kind of thing, versus people that are obsessing over the gear and pixels and lenses and all that stuff, kind of the people that are actually creating photography and making money from it. So hence this conversation. Right. Give us a little background on Tyler Kinzer. Like, how did you kind of make your way into the world of being one of the most sought after architectural photographers in Tucson?
So I started my photography career basically in high school. And I started, just in high school photography class, shooting film, developing it, black and white. Landscape stuff was kind of my passion and always, still kind of is. And so that lends itself to architectural, and, real estate is kind of a offshoot of that. But it's a lot easier to make money shooting real estate than it is landscape or architectural. So hence the wanting to have fun doing what I love for a living. And, it progressed to from a part-time job in evenings and mornings shooting houses for friends and relatives to now it's been about 3 years full time here in Tucson, and built a good client base here. And I have my small niche that I'm making a pretty good living just shooting a camera. So
wow, yeah, that's the dream, living the dream, right? And
exactly.
It's interesting. There's when you talk about becoming a professional photographer, i.e. claiming, putting on your tax returns that you are a photographer as your primary source of income. This is, like I said, how you make the car payments or mortgage payments or whatever. It is the source of income. Of course, the amount of money that it takes to survive on varies from city to city, country to country, et cetera. Without revealing, how much you're making, obviously, what is it, is it, obviously you've been doing it for 3 years, so it is sustainable. But for the people that are looking at this, they're like, yeah, I want to move into this kind of photography in my town. What kind of pitfalls should they look for? Can they expect to be making $1 million the first year, or should they be planning for ramen noodles? What do you think?
Your first year is a little tough. It takes a little while to get that client base up. My recommendation would be to take great photographs first. Get those photographs out there, get an interest, and just put yourself out there as a professional photographer, and people will come and want to hire you, and just deliver high quality and just stay competitive with your local market. I know a California market is a lot different than my market here in Tucson, um, for both housing and um, real estate photography charges. So stay competitive with your prices and over deliver would be my advice.
Yeah, yeah, always, right? Under promise, over deliver, build up that clientele. You know, I'm curious to hear about kind of a day in the life. What does that look like for someone that is, shooting houses and creating, really important work that's going to, hopefully sell a $500,000, $1 million home. What does it look like, from before you get the job all the way through to when you deliver the job? And then after that, we'll talk a little bit about post processing.
So basically, I'll fill up a week in the prior week usually. So you have to be flexible with your schedule. A realtor will call me and they'll ask my availability. I have a pretty good client base now, so they're pretty flexible with me. Everybody wants something the next day in the real estate industry. So I understand that. So I know, and so I do all my own editing, which a lot of real estate photographers have moved to outsourcing um, their editing. However, I like to work and have my product be my product. Um, I know a lot of people will say, well, when do you spend time with your family if you're editing your own stuff? And I really don't work that much.
Yeah.
Um, I work 8 hours a day at the most, and it's all fun. And sometimes, uh, it's a lot busier than others, but that's up to you whether you want to schedule that out or not. So basically, someone will call me. I'll go out. So I'll go out and shoot the house. That takes about an hour. Usually, it's a 20-minute drive in this town. California would be a lot longer drives, I would imagine, and depending on your area. And and then I'll say I'll see you later, and then I go back and my editing process takes about an hour, sometimes an hour and a half, depending on the property. But a normal run of the mill property, you can get done a lot quicker. Like I said, I like to do the full over deliver with flash frames and ambient frames. It takes a little more editing, but the final product is a lot better. And that's, I think, what kind of makes me stand out in Tucson, that my prices are competitive and I deliver a really high quality product.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And on the post processing side of it, I wanted to talk about you know the how you're incorporating Luminar and Photoshop and all those things into that workflow to create that superior product. What does that look like once you got a folder full of images for a particular home on your desktop? What's the flow from raw photos on this side to finished photos that you're going to hand over to the agent?
So I shoot with, I've just switched. I think I've been shooting for about a year with the Nikon Z6. And I have the FTZ adapter with 11 or a 17-30 lens. And I shoot one frame ambient, one frame flash. So, um, that's my base. My two raw images is one ambient, one flash. What I do then is I take them into Lightroom. I do initial adjustments in Adobe Lightroom, um, just to get my exposures correct, because the flash is always too dark. I use a 8200, the Godox 8200 flash.
Hmm.
Um, and really what I'm looking for there is color corrections more than lighting itself. Um, and so once I'm done in Lightroom with those basic adjustments, I'll take them into Photoshop and I will do a quick blend. I have a bunch of presets set up that I can I can quickly blend through and paint in ambient or flash. And then for exteriors, I shoot HDR. So that would be an interior.
Yeah.
The exteriors, I shoot a bracket frame. I shoot 3 frames for the most part usually. And it would be 3 stops apart, 3 frames. And I take that into Aurora HDR. And that's a really quick process to batch process my HDR files. Mm-hmm. And I have a preset in Aurora that's like an exterior real estate preset that I made myself. And so I process them all in Aurora, and then I would take them into Luminar, and I have a preset there that I've set up that I can one click and export, and they all look great. And then just any kind of final exposure adjustments, contrast, stuff like that in Lightroom one more time. It sounds like a lot, but it's really, it's really
what you do it a couple times.
Yeah,
you get
you do 100 a year. So, yeah, 100 a week. Who knows? Yeah.
What does that look like in terms of the numbers of final images, or how many on an average house? Right, I'm sure it varies depending on the home, but how many shots do you shoot of a particular property, and then how many shots of that main, let's call it the raw group, end up being ready for the agent or the client to look at?
Usually the shots in camera would be around 100, like raw files, and then delivered would be around 30, maybe a little less. I find that agents just like more, even if you take a couple more, kind of, I would say, useless angles, of a backyard or something. They feel like they're getting more for their money if you deliver 35 instead of 29, so.
Right. Do you specify when they're booking you, and do you have like how does that look? Do you have a page that says, package A, 15 processed image, package B, 100 images, or does it go by square footage of the home? How do you price things?
I don't really, so we don't see a ton of square footage variance. I have a luxury package that's anything over basically a listing price of $500,000 or above. You're going to want the luxury package because it's going to be close to 50 deliverable files. But I generally do, I promise 30 images for just a regular run-of-the-mill daytime. And so that looks like, in my market, it's very affordable. If you're watching this in some other market that you might want to shoot me for charging like $150 per house.
Wow. Yeah.
But my cost of living is a lot lower than, a lot of markets as well. Whoa, so I do well.
30 images, 30 final processed images, exactly, including photography for $150.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I was thinking, wow. I was literally thinking you were going to say, like, for 30 images, you start at $500 or something like that. If you want the deluxe $1 million plus home package, that's $750. Right. Wow.
And it depends on your listing as well. If you have a really high quality luxury listing, or if you want, it's more interior design focused, then I'm going to spend a lot more time, obviously, shooting and processing. So
yeah. Wow. Okay. You just blew my mind with that, man, because it's like $150. I don't even jump on a Zoom call for less than $150.
Right.
That's awesome. We got to work on that pricing. I'm committed to get your pricing at least double by the end of the year.
I need to watch your podcast more about the business aspect, maybe.
For sure. Yeah. Price perception, man. Price perception. Oh, that's cool. But if it's working for you, absolutely. You know your market better than
Yeah.
anybody else. So, if it works, keep doing what you're
Well,
doing for sure.
yeah. So on that note, the market, I feel like I'm kind of ahead of the game because a lot of people here are joining me on that higher quality and um, less cost because the big box photographers are coming in to take your job anyways. You might as well join them at their, I'm a little above their price level, so it's not. And the markets other places could be the same, but I say, hey, it's an extra $50 because they're doing it for $100. So
Yeah.
to get that agent to pay the extra $50 for higher quality, um, it's not that hard, and it would be a lot harder to say, hey, it's worth actually more, 300 more than. So I
Yeah.
definitely adjust my editing style to that as well.
Yeah. I'm curious about just so I get the workflow and how all that works, and the Lightroom to Aurora to Luminar, and then maybe finishing back in Lightroom. I see how that works. Um, Future facing. So the Luminar is going to be upgraded to or evolving into Luminar AI with a bunch of features in there that automate a lot of things, right? So I'm sure you've seen some of the videos and some of the demos and stuff on that. So what do you think about just this is like kind of a blue sky type conversation, the impact of a technology like artificial intelligence in the photography world, specifically architectural and real estate. Are you for it? Because like in the beginning, you were saying you like to have a hands-on approach. If it's a Tyler Kinzer image, you want to have shepherded it all the way through.
Mhm.
Are you willing to hand over some of that control to an AI to make things go a little bit faster and maybe increase those profit margins?
Oh, I think so for sure. But the issue that I have, it's not necessarily um, the bulk. So when I'm editing an image initially, I love an AI.
Hmm.
And I, it's as a starting point. If I can just click a button and it looks great, then I'll say, okay, that looks awesome. I would like, and uh, architectural and real estate, we don't really necessarily need a style as much as a portrait wedding type of photographer would.
Hmm.
Um, we need to make it look realistic. We need to make it look great. So that's one of the things Aurora does already with their presets. It's kind of like a preset thing, but smarter. The AI would be great because I don't want to go through every image and say, oh, these highlights are clipping or whatever, and so it's a really good starting point, I think, for just any image. I
Yeah.
shoot architecture for fun as well, just for my own art, and we have a bunch of cool old Spanish buildings here. And so sometimes I don't know what I want to do with it. And so sometimes an AI will help me, get started on the edit.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good way to put it. I think that's the point. I think there's we as photographers we always need like a villain or somebody to rail against, whether it's RAW versus JPEG or Nikon versus Canon or Micro Four Thirds versus full frame or Godox versus Pro Photo. There's always something. There's always a versus in there, and I think that's you said it exactly right. I think that's the wrong way to look at artificial intelligence when it comes to image processing, because it's more of give me a head start, right? Or
Right.
get me to the, whereas before I had to do these 12 things in order to get the image to the point where I can start refining it into the Tyler Kinzer look. Now it's like, okay, it's ready to go. It maybe even present some options that you hadn't considered that you can then take and run with as well. What would you like to see? Like, you've been using Aurora, you've been using Luminar, the current version, because AI is not out yet, but you've been using the software. What do you feel is missing that would help you be a better architectural real estate shooter?
Um, I think for me, it comes down to obviously like cutting that time down of editing, and the coming back to the AI. A lot of the I've played with the Luminar have some AI settings now, and they seem a lot better than presets. Like the presets are always full bore, or they they just change the whole color scheme. I just want my correct colors. If there was an AI that would just correct whites and blues and yellows, I would be like a rich man, because that's what I spend. I spend half my time just trying to color match. So,
Yeah.
um, so like a quick white point adjustment would be great. I know it's pretty hard to do. You kind of have to paint in your whites for that white point adjustment, but that's what I would like to see more than anything, like color stuff. But I think the AI stuff is great because it's not exactly a preset like you would see on Instagram or whatever.
Hmm.
It's not too much.
Yeah, yeah, and it's tasteful, and it lets you, if you want to push it to too much, then you can take the reins and go ahead and move and push it to too much. But yeah,
Right.
I think it's an important technology that, or well, it's not even technology, it's a direction in image processing that will help photographers just be better, and it'll help newer people that are new to the art form get better quicker. So, but like anything else, there's always going to be controversy around this stuff. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
I want to wrap it up and talk a little bit about the delivery side of things. So once you're done, you got those 30 images packed up. I'm assuming they're JPEGs that you're going to deliver to the final client. Where do they go? Do you just email them a zip file, or do you put them in a gallery and give them a password? How does that work?
Yeah, so I email just through Google Drive. It's the cheapest storage option,
Hmm.
delivery option, and I've found that it's basically just as easy to use as Dropbox, if not better. There's still always the real estate agent that will be very confused and not how, and so you have to answer the phone and teach them how to download something from the internet. But um, and I know there's a lot of websites that deliver a whole package with pay before you can use the images and stuff like that. I haven't had a problem with people paying my bills. I send them the images the next day, and like I said, I have a pretty close knit client base. I think I've had a couple of degenerates, but um, yeah, it's not too much. I work on a trust kind of factor, which
Yeah.
might bite me one day, but I'm not trying to build a big box photography. I'm just trying to make a living shooting my
Yep.
camera, like I said.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is awesome. It really is sincerely
Yeah.
awesome. So on top of that, with the turnaround time thing, are you saying you go in, like, say you have an appointment to shoot at home? I assume you try to shoot them at a certain time of day, is in morning or golden hour or something, right? So do you take that shoot of 100-ish images that day and then turn them around the following day for the agent, or what's the turnaround time like?
Yeah, usually. So my turnaround is promised 48 hours. Um, and a lot of times agents will ask me for them the next morning. And I just charge them a rush fee for editing because it means I'm going to be up later. Um, if it's possible, and sometimes I'll say, you know what, it's not possible. I just had a baby 5 months ago, so
Ooh.
we my business has changed a little bit since then.
So you
I
charge a time
have to
away from my
babysit.
newborn fee, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Good. See,
Yeah.
that should be
So,
$150 right
right.
there.
Yeah. So it's changing a little bit for me, the rushing and editing late nights, um but I just get it done when I can, and usually, if I say, hey, I need 2 days, then they're fine with it.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, awesome, man. Thank you for doing this interview. It's always really refreshing and interesting to talk to photographers in general, but especially photographers that are using the tools, right? You got your camera, you everything is for a reason. You got your Godox 8200 out there, so for lighting, you're just
Right.
working it and making a living using the gear and the software tools that are available. So kudos to you, man. Congratulations.
Right. Thanks, man. Yeah, I'd
Yeah.
love to get back into being a gearhead, but since I've kind of built my gear portfolio, I'm very narrow-minded now. I just keep that stuff fixed.
Yeah, yeah, I think that
Keep
happens
it
with age, man.
clean.
As you get older, you're like,
Exactly.
really? Do I really need all that stuff? And sitting
Yeah.
there depreciating all the time. So Tyler, if people want to contact you, especially people in the Tucson area that want to take advantage of your prices before you raise them, where what's a good place for them to connect with you?
You can go, my Instagram is pretty well updated. It's just instagram.com/Tyler Kinzer photo is my Instagram handle. And tylerkinzer.com, TYLERKINZER. That's my website, and I keep that relatively updated. But you can see my pricing sheet and everything there. So
Very cool. All right, man. Well, thanks again. I,
don't
I
bash me
appreciate.
on them.
I'm gonna bash you. anytime, anytime you feel like you need to apologize before you say your prices, you need to increase them. Unless it's the opposite, like, I
Right.
know you're gonna think this is too expensive, but that's what I charge, $1,500 a shoot. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So no, that's
Yeah.
cool, man. Yeah, so I encourage people to head over there, check it out. Your work is fantastic, obviously, and it's been a pleasure chatting with you. So thank you for taking the time today.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Frederick.